Anna had been my girlfriend for over a year, and all that time, she refused to let me touch her. She said she was a conservative girl, and the most precious things had to be saved for after marriage. I believed her. Until I found a box of emergency contraception pills in her bag. And now, one pill was missing. My mind went blank. The sound of water running in the bathroom abruptly stopped. Anna had finished her shower. I quickly placed the bag back where it was, but I couldn't stop my thoughts from racing. The night before, Anna had told me she was going out to dinner and a movie with her best friend. She didn't get home until almost midnight. Could it be? The more I thought about it, the more everything started to feel off. Anna came out of the bathroom in her pajamas, and I asked casually, "What movie did you and your friend see last night? Was it any good?" Her hand froze as she was drying her hair. "We just picked something random." I was so busy chatting with her that I forgot what we watched. I was about to press further, but she quickly added, "Let's not talk about it. I have class tomorrow and need to get some sleep." As she turned to leave, I couldn't hide the darkening look on my face. That night, I didn't sleep a wink. Anna worked as a dance teacher at a children's training center. Whenever I wasn't busy, I'd drive her to and from work. I knew just about everyone in her social circle. After thinking it through all night, I couldn't come up with anyone she might have done something wrong with, if she had actually betrayed me. The next morning, I drove Anna to work as usual, but she suddenly said, "You don't need to pick me up tonight. Something going on today? You've been working so much lately," she said. "I don't want you to have to work harder than you already do." I didn't answer right away. Wait a second, wasn't she always annoyed with me for not being able to pick her up when I worked late? Why was she being so considerate now? Something was wrong. I agreed, but the doubt gnawed at me all day. That evening, I drove straight to her training center, parked the car in a discreet spot, and waited. By 9. The parents began leaving with their kids. Then came a few of Anna's colleagues. But Anna didn't show up. This was bad. As my patience wore thin, Anna finally emerged. She was holding hands with a little girl in a dance outfit. The girl's parent, a tall man in his 30s, walked alongside them. The man walked up to a Mercedes parked by the curb, opened the door, and signaled for the girl to get in. The girl waved goodbye to Anna, who waved back. It seemed like Anna had just been with the child's parent. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe the birth control pill was just a misunderstanding. Everyone who knew Anna said she was pure and sweet. I knew better, though. Anna was the type to blush at dirty jokes. There was no way she'd betray me. As I calmed down, I began to feel guilty for doubting her. But then, the next moment hit me like a thunderclap. As the little girl climbed into the car, the man stepped in front of the window. His hand slid into Anna's shirt and roughly squeezed her breast. Anna lightly swatted at him in mock annoyance. The ease and familiarity of that movement, this wasn't their first time. I don't know how I made it home. I had just gotten back. Anna had come home too. She seemed in a good mood, humming a song as she headed for the shower. The box of contraception pills was gone from her bag. I grabbed her phone. In the past, I never would have done that. So, this was why she hadn't deleted her chat history. The first conversation in the list was with someone saved as Mr. George. There were at least a few hundred messages between them, and with each one, my heart sank further. No hickeys on my neck next time. I can't keep telling my boyfriend it was a mosquito bite. Be more careful around your daughter. Do you still find your wife, Emily, sexually attractive? Honestly, touching Emily feels like touching myself. Her bodice nothing compared to yours. Are you wearing that lace lingerie from last time today? You're not going to show me? Believe me. It'll make you cry till you can't close your legs. As I scrolled back further, I saw messages about me. He's pretty nice, willing to spend money on me. Is your boyfriend impotent? How does he stand it? He can't stand it, but he has to. He's too scared to break up with me. You're not planning to marry this kind of guy, are you? I haven't thought about marriage. Having him around as a boyfriend's fine. If I get bored, I'll just dump him. I had prepared myself for this moment, but seeing these messages with my own eyes left me numb, like I had fallen into an icy abyss. 1 year of dating. And I, her official boyfriend, still had to ask for permission just to hold Anna's hand or kiss her, depending on her mood. As for anything more intimate? Forget it. It was out of the question. Because Anna always emphasized that girls should be reserved, even bragging about how strict her family was growing up. The most precious things had to be saved for marriage. That's how you show responsibility for both love and marriage. I respected her wishes. I even thought I had found a rare, good girl. But what was the truth? She acted like the most chaste, virtuous woman in front of me. Yet behind my back, she was sleeping with a married man. Anger surged through me. I was about to lose my mind. Unable to hold it in anymore, I shoved the bathroom door open. Anna, shocked, screamed, "What are you doing? Who let you in?" She covered her lower half, unable to even pay attention to her upper body. The faint marks of hickeys on her collarbone burned my eyes. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to stay silent. No. This wasn't the time to confront her yet. I took a deep breath, pointed to the razor on the counter. I was just looking for this. She threw the soap at my face. Get out. The disgust and hostility on her face were worlds apart from the playful, coquettish expressions she wore when flirting with other men online. Breaking up, there was no other choice. It had to happen. I had memorized the license plate number of that man's car from last night. Given that his daughter took dance lessons from Anna, it wasn't hard to figure out who he was. Anna's lover was named George. He worked as a vice president at a subsidiary of a big corporation, drove a luxury car, and lived in a villa. He was the epitome of a social elite. A successful businessman. Ever since his wife Emily became pregnant with their second child, he would occasionally take his daughter to extracurricular classes. That's how he and Anna got to know each other. I hired someone to tail him for just a few days, and to my surprise, I found out that not only was he still involved with his ex-girlfriend Susie, but they'd had sex at least once. George was a piece of work. His wife was pregnant, and yet he couldn't stay faithful. I gathered all the evidence, chat logs between George and Anna. Photos of him having dinner with Susie, and even managed to get Emily's phone number. Originally, I had planned to send everything directly to Emily. But then, I thought about it. Doing that might not be the best move. Now that I have all these leverages on George, I am going to destroy his reputation. As for Anna, it was like she was caught up in the thrill of a love affair. She lived with me, but always seemed to be staring at her phone, smiling to herself, like I was blind. And not only that. She started dressing more provocatively and coming home later and later every night. When I warned her to be more careful in front of her students, she told me I was old-fashioned and lacked romance. Fine. I was lacking in romance, but that scumbag had all the romance in the world. It wasn't until later that I found out Anna's new bags and perfumes weren't from some shopping agent. Like she had claimed. They were all gifts from George. The two of them had even planned to go to a hot spring together. Anna used the same old excuse and brought her friend Bonnie in as a cover. I played along with the role of the good boyfriend, even telling her to enjoy herself and call me when she was done if she wanted me to pick her up. Once Anna left, I secretly followed her. George's car was parked by the side of the road. As soon as Anna got in, they started kissing passionately. I used a new phone number ID set up and sent Emily a text. As your husband's ex, I don't want to interfere with your family, but he keeps pestering me. Please keep your man in check. Almost immediately, Emily called me. I didn't pick up. She kept calling. I sent her another message. Instead of wasting time calling me, why don't you call your husband and find out whether he's really working late or doing something else? That was all I said. I waited patiently. Just as George's car started moving, it pulled over to the side again. The next moment, Anna was shoved out of the car. Through the passenger side window, I could see George was on a video call. Anna, stunned, banged on the window. George didn't even look at her. He just hung up the phone, stepped on the gas, and drove off. Anna's face turned black on the spot. She wasn't in a good mood when she came home. I acted dumb. Baby, why are you back so soon? Didn't you go with Bonnie? She didn't answer me and headed straight to the bedroom, her phone's button sounds echoing non-stop. It was not until she fell asleep at night that I saw what she had posted to George on her social media platform. Are you really kicking me out of the car for that old woman? What else can she do other than have kids? Do you think this is fair to me, George? Well, now she was the one playing the victim. Is this what mistresses have become? Complaining about fairness compared to the wife? She posted dozens of angry messages, but that scumbag didn't reply to a single one. Frustrated and full of rage, she turned on me. She kept nitpicking at everything I did. If the coffee was too hot, she'd complain. If the clothes I hung out weren't aligned the right way, she'd find fault with that too. Even when the power went out unexpectedly, she blamed me for it. What kind of crappy house did you buy? Are you just going to sit here and wait while the power's out? Why don't you figure something out? What can I even expect from you? I have friends, you know. They all found rich men. They live in big houses, have nannies, and just wait to become rich wives. What can you give me? Why is being with you so full of trouble? I let her rant and rave, keeping my head down as I looked at my phone. This only made Anna angrier. Are you deaf? I'm talking to you. She tried to grab my phone, and I finally lost my patience. Can you shut up for once? Since we'd been together, I had always been accommodating, never once raising my voice, never speaking harshly. So now, she was both shocked and furious. You're yelling at me? You're actually yelling at me? I wanted to say more, but I held it in. I even wanted to slap her, but I knew it wasn't the right time. Which woman acts like you? You make a big deal out of every little thing, throwing tantrums like some crazy woman. And you're a teacher. What if your students found out? How embarrassing would that be? I've been too nice to tell you, but every time you lose your temper, you look awful ugly. Even. Anna had always been confident about her looks. As a dancer, she was used to receiving compliments and praise. Over time, this made her feel superior to other women, almost as if they weren't even on the same level. In her chats with George, whenever they talked about his wife, she'd criticize her for being low-class or ugly. When I said that to her, she nearly lost it. I didn't stick around to listen. I locked myself in the bedroom. Outside, she was stomping and yelling. Ryan, you'll regret this. Don't come begging for my forgiveness later. Then came a loud bang. Anna left my place. I slept soundly that night. The next morning, I drove straight to Anna's parents' house, the Millers. They'd invited me over a few times before, but I always made excuses not to go. I knew why they wanted to see me. They were after money. Anna had an older brother, Carl, who was married now. After he got married, there was no room for Anna at their place anymore. Before moving in with me, she had rented a place of her own. Now that Carl's wife, Monica, was about to give birth, there wasn't enough space at the Miller household. So, the Millers were thinking about buying Carl a house. When I arrived, I went straight to the point. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, I'm here today to talk about marrying Anna. The Millers exchanged a glance but didn't say anything. I knew what they were thinking. The first time I visited, Mrs. Miller had subtly asked if I could contribute money to help Carl buy a house if I married Anna. Anna had gotten mad at me for this, calling me cheap, saying I wasn't sincere and that I looked down on her. Mr. Miller took a slow sip of tea and spoke, "Ryan, why the sudden urgency? I've been dating Anna for over a year, and I think it's about time. Plus, I'm not getting any younger. My parents keep pushing me to settle down. Marriage is a big deal." I quickly reassured him, "Don't worry, Mr. Miller. Once Anna and I are married, I'll take good care of her. I'll be fully committed." Mrs. Miller, uninterested, remarked, "Commitment isn't something you just say. It's what you show." I smiled without responding. "Anna's been spoiled since she was little. We can't bear for her to suffer." "Is that so? Then why was it that when Carl got married, Anna was cast aside? With no room left in the house for her?" After going around in circles, Mrs. Miller finally got to the point. "I'll be blunt with you. If you're going to marry Anna, you'll need to help Carl buy a house." She raised 3 fingers. "Mrs. Miller, my family can offer $500,000. Is that enough?" Mrs. Miller was stunned. "How much did you say?" Mr. Miller spit out his coffee in shock, staring at me in disbelief. I smiled faintly. $500,000. Both of them froze, eyes wide in disbelief. With $500,000, Carl's house would be more than covered. And the best part? The money didn't have to be repaid. Mr. Miller was almost shaking with excitement. "Ryan, are you serious?" "Of course, Mr. Miller. How could I joke about something like this? Anna's such a wonderful girl. She deserves me to treat her well. But we did have a fight yesterday, and she still hasn't spoken to me." Mr. Miller quickly reassured me, "That's all right. Anna's just got a bit of a temper. I'll have a word with her later." I nodded and smiled. I took a sip of water I'd brought with me to stifle my sarcasm. It seemed like Mr. Miller only just realized something. And he immediately jumped up to make coffee for me. Mrs. Miller offered to cook. I quickly declined. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, it's all right. I have other matters to attend to, so I'll be leaving now." Despite their insistence, I left. I did have business to take care of. For the past few days, I'd had people keep tabs on George. The moment he checked into a hotel, I was to be notified. As expected, it didn't take long. I wasn't surprised, but I hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. Anna had just fought with me and left the house yesterday, and today she was already with George. I tried calling her, but she had blocked me. Probably because she didn't want me interfering with her time with George. I rushed to the hotel. Today was going to be unforgettable for them both. About half an hour later, I arrived. Luca, the person I hired to follow George, led me to room 802. Luca pretended to be a hotel staff member and knocked on the door, claiming to offer room service. George answered quickly, wearing a loose bathrobe, a satisfied look on his face, clearly, had just had sex. I couldn't hold myself back anymore. Without hesitation, I kicked him in the chest with all my might. "Go to hell." George, caught completely off guard, was knocked back 3 meters and collapsed to the floor. I didn't give him a chance to recover. I swung my fist, aiming straight for his face. Just a few blows, and his nose started bleeding. He screamed in pain. "Who the hell are you? If you keep hitting me, I'll have someone kill you." I hit him harder. George tried to fight back, but with Luca and me against him, he was completely outmatched. In the end, he could only curl up and take the beating. All the anger I'd been holding in for so long came pouring out in a flood. Suddenly, a scream pierced through the air. Anna came out of the bathroom, frozen when she saw me. "What are you doing here?" She asked me that. After everything? I'd put up with so much for this moment, and now she had the nerve to ask why I was here? As I moved toward George again, Anna actually threw herself in front of him, trying to protect him with her body. I almost couldn't believe what I was seeing. "Anna, weren't you the one saying you wanted to be reserved? You said you were conservative. You said no intimacy before marriage. What do you call this? So all your talk about keeping your body pure was just for me, right?" Anna's face turned red with embarrassment, and she snapped back at me. "Have you ever thought about why I went to someone else? If you satisfied me in every way, would I have looked for someone else? Have you ever reflected on your own shortcomings?" That was it. I couldn't take it anymore. "Anna, you're trash. Even prostitutes are more honest than you." She stomped her foot in fury, cursing back at me. "You are a loser. Let me make it clear to you, he is richer than you, taller than you, more handsome than you, better than you in every way. What's wrong with sleeping with him? We are going to get married." I couldn't help but laugh. "So you getting married just like that? Think I don't know anything about George S past or background? And now you showing off?" I turned to Luca. "Did you get it on tape? Don worry, it s all on camera," Luca replied, his voice calm. Anna, on the other hand, had already broken off relations with me, so she became even more confident. "We have nothing to do with each other anymore. Get out of here." I ignored her. "George, does your wife Emily know about your little affair while she was pregnant?" Both of them immediately changed their expressions. I continued, "What do you think will happen if she finds out you're sleeping with your daughter's teacher?" George frowned. "How do you know my wife, Emily?" "Doesn't matter. I hear Emily has 2 brothers, and neither of them is someone you want to mess with." George S face darkened with anger, clearly unhappy with my threat. "So what is it that you want from me?" His words pushed my anger even higher. I slapped him across the face. "You think a few dirty bucks make you special? All you care about is money." Had called me a poor loser more than once to Anna, but now that I had him caught in the act, he still acted like he was on some high pedestal. "So what do you want from me?" he asked. I replied slowly, "If you want me to keep quiet and not tell Emily, you can slap Anna 10 times. Anna's face turned bright red with rage. "Are you out of your mind? Ryan, today I realized how deeply you've hidden your true nature. You're despicable, shameless, and disgusting at your core. My best friend Bonnie was right. If you going to find a man, at least pick one with money. Men like you are the most arrogant." Anna ranted on and on, but before she could go any further, a sharp slap across her face cut her off. She froze, eyes wide, staring at George. George's expression was a mix of confusion and anger. Is that so? He didn't hesitate for a second, delivering a slap that was even quicker than I expected. I gave him a thumbs up. 9 more. Don't try to cheat me. If any of them aren't up to standard, well, start over. Anna stood there, stunned. She just stared at George, shocked. Grinding his teeth, George slapped her again, a second time. "George!" Anna screamed, the sound so sharp and agonizing it nearly pierced my eardrums. She completely lost her cool, no longer the composed, graceful Anna, a far cry from the sweet, gentle woman she'd always shown herself to be. I'm afraid her colleagues and students would be surprised if they saw it. You really hit me? Anna shrieked. How could you hit me? My parents never laid a finger on me. George's face was marked by a long, deep scratch from Anna's nails. His temper flared. And he shouted back, what do you expect me to do? If you didn't drag me here and keep harassing me, none of this would have happened. I wouldn't be getting slapped around if you hadn't driven me to this point. He turned to face me, pointing an accusing finger at Anna. The blame lies entirely with her. Since last night, she's been all over me, saying she couldn't wait to sleep with me, asking if I was nervous or not. Anna's whole body froze. Her face turned crimson, unsure whether it was from embarrassment or fury. I reminded him flatly, 8 more. George. His anger, clearly focused on Anna now, restrained her with one hand while his other continued to slap her. It was as if he was redirecting all his frustration onto her, and with each slap, the force only seemed to grow stronger. 3. 4. 5. By the time the last slap landed, Anna's face was so swollen it looked like a pig/s head, and her throat was hoarse from crying. The 10 slaps weren't terribly damaging, but the humiliation was unbearable. Her eyes were bloodshot, filled with hatred, as if she wanted to kill someone. George, his face darkened with anger, turned to me. Can we be done now? I smiled. Sure, I'll be on my way. Anna, from this moment on, we're officially done. I wish you two a long and happy marriage. With that, I signaled Luca, who had been watching in silence, to follow me out. Just as we were about to leave, Anna's hysterical voice rang out behind us. George, you're such a bastard. Then came the sound of something being kicked over. Luca, looking surprised, asked me, you're just going to let him go like that? Isn't that too easy on him? I shook my head. Not a chance. I'd been waiting for this moment for days. And it wasn't just about taking a few pictures of him. I wasn't going to let him get away that easily. Without a second thought, I dialed the police. Hello, I'd like to anonymously report a potential case of rape. The victim has also suffered severe physical abuse and is currently emotionally distraught, confronting the suspect. The location is the Garland Hotel, room 802. I had promised George the first wouldn't tell his wife, Emily, but I didn't promise I wouldn't do anything else. Luca looked at me, wide-eyed. You are still awesome. The hotel was conveniently close to the police station. By the time the officers arrived, Anna and George were still at it, fighting. When George saw the cops, he nearly pissed himself. But at that moment, Anna was furious, practically demanding his death, accusing him of rape. It was a chaotic scene. In the end, both of them were taken away. Rape charges are no small matter. The interviews took 7 or 8 hours. But since there were chat records and hotel surveillance footage to back up the story, George was eventually cleared of the rape accusation. That didn't matter, though. Emily still found out. She stormed into the police station, demanding answers. When she heard that her husband was caught in a hotel room with his mistress and that they had gotten into a physical altercation, she was enraged. George, realizing he was in the wrong, was practically begging for forgiveness. As for Anna, she'd been mocking Emily for not being good enough for George, but when it came to facing her, she was nowhere to be found. She didn't come to my place or back to her own home. Instead, she ran to her friend Bonnie's place. A few days later, I got a call from Mrs. Miller. Ryan, what happened between you and Anna? She came back yesterday without saying a word, then this morning, after she left, she told us you two broke up. She said she wants to quit her job. Miller and I are about to explode. Quit her job. I figured it was probably because she didn't want her scandal to get out and embarrass her in front of her colleagues and parents. I tentatively asked, Mrs. Miller, did she not tell you why we broke up?" Her tone became annoyed. "No, she didn't. Ryan, I'm telling you. Fighting in relationships is normal. No matter what, you're the man, you have to understand and be more tolerant. You and Anna are practically at the point of marriage, and now you're just breaking up like that? Tolerance. Understanding. It sounded nice. But she had no idea what I had put up with from Anna. I feigned a sad expression. "Mrs. Miller, in the end, it's all my fault. I couldn't make Anna happy, and now there's nothing I can do. I'll pack up her things and have them sent over to your house." "That's nonsense," Mrs. Miller snapped. Clearly upset. "Stop talking like that. You live close by, go stop her from quitting her job." "Mrs. Miller, she won't listen to me now." "You go stop her, and I'll be right there," she insisted. How can she just throw away a good job like that? After hanging up the phone, I didn't hesitate for a second. I immediately got in my car and headed straight over. When I arrived, I saw Anna just getting out of a taxi. She was wearing a baseball cap and a mask, completely dressed in black, trying to hide her identity. The moment she looked up, she spotted me. "What are you doing here?" she snapped. I shrugged. "Mrs. Miller asked me to stop you from quitting." Her anger flared up immediately. "We're broken up. What I do now has nothing to do with you." I nodded. "Right." This only seemed to make her even more worked up. "Ryan, who do you think you are? No matter what I did, even leaving that aside, don't you think you're wrong too?" I was wrong, indeed. Wrong for being blind and foolish enough to date her. Wrong for being unconditionally good to her. Don't think just because you've found my mistakes, you'll feel guilty. Breaking up with you is no big deal. Do you believe me? I could find someone better than you in no time. I smiled. "I believe you." She glared at me. "Just get lost." Anna had barely walked in when a group of people stormed in behind her. Leading the pack was none other than George's wife, Emily. She didn't recognize me, and passed by me without even acknowledging me. I raised an eyebrow. Nice timing. I was glad ID made sure to notify Emily that Anna would be here today. "Where's Anna? Get her out here now," Emily demanded, her voice loud and full of authority. Despite her pregnant belly, parents waiting for their kids to finish classes turned their heads in surprise. The receptionist, startled, meekly asked, "Excuse me, are you looking for Teacher Anna?" "Teacher Anna? She's a shameless slut. Bring that bitch out here. I want to ask her if it feels good to sleep with the father of her student." Her words shocked the entire room. The parents were frozen, eyes wide. "Where's Anna? Come out. If you have the nerve to do such shameless things, why don't you have the nerve to face me?" Emily shouted. Her entourage, without needing any further instructions, searched every room upstairs and downstairs. Before long, they dragged a screaming Anna down from the second floor. "Emily, we found her," one of them called out. Anna's long hair was yanked cruelly, her cap, mask, and bag all falling to the floor. Her face was still swollen from the last beating, and when she saw Emily, her eyes were filled with guilt. It was the first meeting of the original wife and the mistress, and it was far from pretty. Emily gritted her teeth. "You really think you're something, huh? Do you think you're beautiful? Attractive? Is it fun to break up other people's families? Does it excite you to flirt with your student's father in front of everyone?" With every word she spoke, she slapped Anna hard. Anna was forced to kneel on the floor, unable to avoid the blows, crying out in pain. Just days ago, George had slapped her, and now it was Emily's turn. Her face was bright red, as if it were about to bleed. She was crying so hard it seemed she couldn't breathe. Even after dozens of slaps, Emily was still not satisfied. "And you still say am inferior to you in every way? You stinky bitch." Anna was horrified. Compared to the pain of the slaps, being humiliated in front of everyone was far more terrifying. "No. No." Anna screamed, desperately trying to shield herself. Some parents, unable to watch the scene any longer, tried to intervene. Emma's friend Tomas shouted, "I dare anyone to stop this. Anyone who helps the mistress is just as shameless." Anna clung to her clothes, but how could she resist the strength of several people? She was dragged along the floor, crying and screaming, her clothes in tatters, a mess of tears and shame. Suddenly, someone charged forward and shoved Tomas aside. "Who the hell are you? Why are you hitting my daughter?" a voice shouted. It was Mrs. Miller. Anna, seeing her as a savior, clung to Mrs. Miller and sobbed uncontrollably. Emily sneered. "Oh, so you're her mother? Don't you know what kind of disgraceful things your daughter has been doing? She should have expected this kind of day when she became a mistress." "Shut up. I know my daughter's character better than anyone. She would never be a mistress. You people are crazy, attacking her like this. I'm calling the police." Emily, not fazed, pulled out a stack of photos from somewhere and threw them at Anna's feet. "Then open your eyes and take a good look, this slut, is she your daughter or not?" Her companions, like they were handing out flyers, passed copies of the photos to everyone in the room. I, who was hiding in the corner, was not left behind. I looked down at the photos I'd been handed. And I couldn't help but mutter, well. It was a thick stack of Anna's risque photos. It turns out the photos I had seen on her phone were only the edited ones. It seemed that George, in his desperate attempt to win Emily's forgiveness, had completely betrayed Anna. Parents in the room couldn't hold back their murmurs. Is this really teacher Anna? These photos, what the difference between this and full nudity? My God, this is so shocking. She doesn't seem like the type to do something like this at all. How can this be fake? I thought she had a boyfriend. What she after? What do mistresses want? They want money. I always wondered why those two stayed behind after class. Turns out they were having an affair. I just feel sorry for the kids. I wonder if they saw anything. Mrs. Miller was completely stunned. Her hands were trembling as she held the photos. Emily continued, "Did you see clearly? This is your good daughter. Flirting with my husband during my pregnancy, slept with him several times. You were going to call the police, right? Go ahead, call them now." Mrs. Miller, who had shouted so loudly earlier, was now eerily quiet. Alice, the dance studio manager, hurriedly entered the room. When she saw the situation, her face fell. She walked up to Emily. "Emily, I completely understand your feelings. But we can always sit down and discuss this calmly. Look. The kids are still in class, and we don't want to cause more of a scene. And these photos, please, we can't let the kids see them. Is this the kind of morally corrupt and shameless teacher you still want to keep at your institution?" Emily snapped. Alice hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. A few of the female parents, though, had suddenly united in their condemnation. "I can't stand mistresses, Alice. If you continue employing this woman, well, ask for a refund." "Yes. Refund our money. With people like this around, who would dare to let their husband pick up their children in the future?" Anna was mortified beyond belief. She didn't know where the courage came from, but she suddenly stood up. "Alice, I came here today to resign. You don't have to make it awkward for yourself. I'll leave on my own." She picked up her hat and bag, about to walk away. But before she could get far, someone grabbed her by the arm. Emily coldly asked, "Did I tell you to leave?" Anna, clearly on the brink of a breakdown, screamed with a tear-choked voice, "You've slapped me, you've insulted me, you've destroyed my reputation, what more do you want from me?" Emily sneered. "That LV bag you're carrying, didn't my husband buy it for you? It our joint property, and if you don't return it, he'll sue you." Anna, humiliated, reluctantly pulled her phone from her bag, throwing the bag angrily onto the floor. But Tomas immediately pulled out a pair of scissors and, in front of Anna, began slicing the bag apart in just a few quick cuts. Emily said lightly, "I think the one you carried is dirty, and it's worthless anyway. He confessed to me that you went to the hotel 4 times in total. And he gave you something each time. But you probably don't know this, those precious gifts you've been treating like treasures? They're all fake. Pathetic. I bet a prostitute makes more money for one night than you do." Anna's body trembled in shock. After saying this, Emily let out a mocking laugh and turned to leave with her entourage, leaving the rest of us stunned. Mrs. Miller's face was dark with rage. She pushed Anna, who was still dazed, and snapped, "What are you still standing around for? Are you trying to make this even more embarrassing?" With that, both the wife and the mistress left the scene. Someone in the crowd muttered, "Why is it always the mistress who gets beaten? Why do women have to make it so hard for other women? Please, how do you know they didn't beat the man too? You don't know what goes on behind closed doors between couples." Either way, teaching the mistress a lesson was the right move. I feel so much better now. The children are about to finish their classes. Hurry up and put these things away. Don_T let the children see them. I don't know whether Emily will forgive George. But I certainly want. A simple slap wasn't enough to satisfy my hatred. I reported his multiple affairs to his company and even spread a little rumor, suggesting that he had contracted a sexually transmitted disease due to his frequent visits to prostitutes. The gossip quickly spread throughout the company. Employees, as usual, couldn't resist such juicy news, and before long, the rumor morphed into something more sensational: he has HIV. Eventually, it developed into a twisted version of events: George, infected with HIV from his prostitute visits, was seeking revenge on society by repeatedly having sex with anyone. He didn't even spare his daughter's teacher. The rumor even included a story about him being dragged to the police station. To make matters worse, several female co-workers shared that they had been verbally harassed by George. His reputation within the company plummeted. I laughed. People in his department were so scared that they couldn't bear to work with him anymore and immediately reported it to the company. He had no way of defending himself. His inappropriate behavior was well known and undeniable. He had no choice but to accept a suspension from work, and no one knew when he would be allowed back. I packed up all of Anna's belongings that she left at my place and returned them to her house, making sure to put the fake bags George had bought her in the most prominent spot. When I arrived at her house, she wasn't there, but Mrs. Miller wouldn't give up and asked if there was any chance left for Anna and me. I pretended to think for a moment before answering, "Mrs. Miller, I respect you, but I must be honest with you, we're truly over." "Ryan," she said, her voice tinged with desperation. "You've been together for so long. Can't you forgive her just this once? Didn't you treat her well? Were all those good things just lies? What's she going to do now?" I spent the whole night trying to figure out who she could have wronged me with. "Are you seriously asking me that?" I thought. Just because I was a good person, does that mean I deserve to be lied to and then guilt-tripped? Seeing me silent, Mr. Miller seemed to gather all his courage and said, "Well, hey race, what well do? We won't ask for the 500,000, you can reduce it by 10,000. After all, Anna was in the wrong here. the 100,000 reduction is our way of showing goodwill. I couldn't help but sneer. This family's logic was bizarre. I'm sorry, Mr. Miller. But I'm going to have to decline. Anna made it clear when we broke up, she's not interested in me. I think it's better that we both move on. With that, I turned and walked away. As I left, I could still hear the sounds of yelling and smashing from inside their house. Mr. Miller was shouting, "What an embarrassment! Why come back after doing such disgraceful things? Get out of here." Mrs. Miller was also complaining, Carl's house was about to be finalized. "You've ruined everything." Then Anna started to cry. "You only care about Carl/'s house." I couldn't help but roll my eyes. I thought that was the end of it, that it was all over. But a month later, something shocking happened that left me completely stunned. Anna had stabbed George. It turned out that ever since that day in the hotel, when I caught them together and George slapped Anna, she had been harboring a deep grudge. Then she was publicly humiliated by Emily and lost her job. But the final straw was when she found out George actually had a sexually transmitted disease. She had been infected too. That was the breaking point. I heard George had been stabbed 7 or 8 times and, despite being rushed to ICU, couldn't survive. As for Anna, it was clear, this was premeditated murder, and she would face legal consequences. For someone as delicate and proud as her, ending up in this situation must have been worse than death.